Hello everyone, my name is Polczyk. Welcome to my adventures in Agile performance management. It's kind of this slide. I kind of wanted something that summed up this journey I've been on over the last couple of years. I feel like I've been exploring an area that's relatively uncharted, in places a little bit dangerous, and searching for better ways for people within teams and Agile teams particularly to get feedback. For performance, professional development, and the reason for this is that it's certainly my experience and my belief that the traditional approaches for gathering feedback and receiving feedback are not great and are particularly unhelpful in the context of an Agile team. So, what I'll be doing over the next 40 minutes is just sharing the work I've been doing and what I think I've learned. I hope you find it interesting and useful. Questions at the end, if you can, then that will improve my chances of getting through this stuff. A lot to go through, so I'm going to try and be brisk. Okay, tiny bit about me. So essentially I'm an application developer, when it comes down to it. That's what I've done for quite a long time. I've progressed as an Agile practitioner and am now a Scrum Master and Agile coach. And by a strange kind of quirk, I seem to have gone full circle back to being an application developer. I'm the creator of something called TeamSense, which is a tool enabling a process for Agile team members to give each other feedback. That's enough about me. What I want to do first is to share with you some research which caught my eye relatively recently. It was released initially, though, some time ago, 2006. Wolf Phelps' name, How, When and Why Bad Apples Spoil the Barrel. Negative group members and dysfunctional groups. Really interesting. If you're someone who's got an interest in team productivity, team performance, effective teams, really well worth taking a look. I would argue that anyone who's in a team should have an interest in the performance of their team, not just the coach or the master or the team lead or the line manager. Maybe everyone should care about this. And it's very intriguing stuff. Bad apple behaviours. So what Glenn and his team did, they examined the impact on team productivity of 3 different behaviours, characterised as the jerk, the slacker, and the depressive pessimist. As soon as I saw this, I thought I could relate to this. I know I've demonstrated, exhibited all of those behaviours at one point or another. Hopefully not all of them together, but possibly, I'm not sure. Now the interesting thing was, or one of many interesting things, was that they measured the impact that the presence of these behaviours had on the productivity of the team. And it was very significant. Disproportionately so, one might think. Just one person behaving in a certain way would have a dramatic 30-40% reduction in productivity. Now, the reasons for that were twofold. First was that some of these behaviours were contagious. People would start mirroring these behaviours and therefore amplifying their effect. The second reason was also quite intriguing, and it was that in the presence of these behaviours, some team members would, as a kind of a defence mechanism to what they could see happening before them, would withdraw from the team. They would de-identify with the group, and in that way, break the performance of the system. Now, as a footnote, another thing that caught my eye about this was that, and it was kind of as a footnote to the research, it was the observation that even if the probability that one individual might exhibit or demonstrate these bad behaviours, even if that probability was quite small, the cumulative effect, the cumulative probability that a team might be affected by bad apple behaviours is much higher, because let's say it's 2%, a 2% probability that an individual might demonstrate some of these behaviours. Well, by the time you've got 7 people in the team, that's 7 times 2%, that's 14% probability. Now, what did this kind of mirrored or spoke to me, relate this to my experience with quite a few teams over quite a long period of time, and which was that most of the time, most teams are absolutely fine. And for a long time in my career, my Agile journey, I thought, hey, no, it's this magical Agile thing. We can create teams where these kinds of problems, these situations, they just don't seem to occur because we've got this wonderful collaboration and we're creating these much happier places, much happier teams for people to work in. And it hadn't been my experience to that time with these situations, that very difficult situations could occur. My outlook, I think, is a little more mature now, and it has kind of led me to realise that no, these are this kind of research, these kinds of situations will inevitably occur in your teams eventually, and so it's something that if you care about the performance of your team, and not just performance, if you care about the people in your team having a happy, satisfying environment in which to come and do work, then this is stuff we need to face up to and think about and have solutions to. I could add as well that for those of us who are engaged in helping organisations to not transition but evolve to a more agile way of working, this is an important thing to think about, because we will be challenged, as likely be, by the HR director, the HR manager, and they will say, as they did with me, look, I love all this stuff you do with this team, this new way of working, everyone's really enjoying it, everyone's much happier and productive, it's great. But what happens when it all goes wrong? That was the challenge that was set to me. And it was one of the things that started me on this journey exploring this area, because I knew deep down, I kind of knew what they were talking about, and I also knew I didn't have a great answer for it. Now I think I've got a good answer. Okay, so the good news is that, firstly, it was noted by Will Phelps and his team that the bad apple behaviours can be moderated in 2 ways. The main way really is by the input of other people on the team. But what this really means is other people on the team putting energy into compensating for these behaviours, which, okay, that's great, and I look back on my work with numerous teams and I can think of plenty of situations where that was happening. But I think really what we need is another tool, another thing, another response to these kinds of situations. And it's my belief that really the only response that I can think of at this time, certainly I think the one that has the best chance of being effective, is by having ways of giving each other feedback within teams that help us to, help to raise awareness of our competencies and also our behaviours relating to those competencies. Okay, so that's kind of an idea of why I think feedback is an important thing for us to understand and master, and to have a solution to, or an approach to, that's appropriate for an agile problem. Let's take a moment to think about the traditional, so what tools are there in most organisations? It's been really interesting, by the way, already in this wonderful conference that I certainly have been enjoying, and I hope you to speak to many different people all around who have told me about how they approach this in their organisations. But mostly it's the traditional approach. One or two of you have got some interesting and funky different approaches which will make great talks in their own right, and I hope those people do that at some point. I digress. So the traditional approach to feedback, I think it can be characterised as looking like this. Essentially, you have one person who is given responsibility for the performance of this whole group. This person is generally called a line manager, and you'll see that they provide these people with feedback, with performance feedback. You'll see the feedback is going in only one direction. downwards. These people don't get to give each other feedback. They don't get to give this person any feedback. Maybe there's somebody up there somewhere who is giving this person some kind of feedback in a similar vein, but I think we'll probably agree that the world up here looks very different to the world down here, and these people together. The other problem, well, the thing that, okay, this can be of some benefit, but the benefit is essentially limited by two things, I feel. Firstly, the competence of this individual, and secondly, the fact that we as human beings are all prone to bias of many different kinds. And if I don't know if Kat's, if you went to Kat's talk earlier, absolutely blew me away on all the different ways that all of us, these people as well, these people as well, sorry, we're all prone to bias, positive and negative. And so what we tend to do is we establish an opinion of someone, and then what we do is we find ways to rationalise and justify our opinion of that person. And from Kat's wonderful talk, we learned how our ability to understand and make effective inferences from the past is fundamentally flawed. Our ability to really know what's going on now is fundamentally flawed. And also our ability to understand what's likely to happen in the future to predict is fundamentally flawed. So, I'm not sure where that leads us, but anyway. So that's feedback. The other thing to say about this the traditional approach, the typical approach, is that it's costly and it's heavy. Therefore, it generally happens relatively infrequently. Far too infrequently, 6 months is typical for traditional performance approach and the like. Far too infrequent for it to be provide anything other than a relatively meaningless box ticking exercise. Okay, so that's how it looks now. This is exceedingly problematic. If you imagine these people are an agile team, with agile teams, what we're trying to do is to encourage self-organisation. Having somebody in this role where they have such authority, if you like, over these people's career, reward, all of this stuff, I would argue is an impediment to self-organisation. So, there you go. I could go on that as well. So, traditionally, that's what it looks like. That's not a great approach for your team. You're not. So, I kind of came into this entirely by accident. I didn't wake up and think, oh, that performance management area really must kind of, as Agilists, we must tackle this. Although we must. What happened was I was in an organisation, and we had reformed their teams from a very siloed team arrangement into one which is comprised of a number of cross-functional teams, all striving to be self-organising in their work. But in doing so, we had disrupted their existing line management reporting structure. And the thing that we were tasked with providing, the thing that we needed, this is an immediate need, was for a way for line managers and people who they're responsible for to be able to have better, regular, one-to-one kind of coaching sessions. That was the need. That was all we were after. So working with the HR director and the developments manager and another agile group, Basil, we came up with an idea. And the idea was very simple. It was just essentially just a lightweight, team-oriented 360 review.
Could you speak up a little? Sorry.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Is that any better?
It's much better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll try and sweep this way. Thank you. So a lightweight, team-oriented 360 review. We identified a number of competencies that we thought were relevant. You'll see those in a minute. Everyone in the team exchanged these ratings with everyone else. Everyone was, no one was exempt, everyone was included. This went off to HR, who produced some kind of chart. The chart went back to the individual, who then took it with them to in their one-to-one discussion with their line manager. Here's the first, one of the first charts that we did. This is my chart. You can see the competencies around that we came up with around the outside. We've got a self-rating here, how I rated myself, and then we've got a minimum and a maximum and an average in green. So the average reflects how the team's perception of me. Oh no, people taking photographs. It's okay, it's okay. So what were the team telling me? They were saying, okay, I'm moderately technically curious, respectful, communicative, collaborative, committed to the team, quality-driven, solution-oriented. Great. And genuinely, when I got this from the team, I felt very reassured and very positive about it. It was a great thing to receive from my colleagues because you're never quite sure. You never know. It was just a nice positive thing to be told. Now, as you see here, it all starts to get a bit funky around the area of business domain knowledge. And I asked the team about it. What's kind of happening here? And what I was told, the team were very open and explained that some of them had interpreted business domain as being their business domain, which was the insurance business, insurance software. And pretty much all of them were very prepared to point out to me that I know absolutely nothing about the insurance domain. That's what happened. But a couple of them realised that because I was in the team as the Scrum Master and serving as an Agile coach for the firm, that actually my domain was Agile. So a couple of them gave me a little bit better rating. Okay, that's fine. But that was the explanation. And what it illustrated is the importance of, for this to work, everyone has to have a pretty good understanding of what these competencies mean and what the behaviours, the positive behaviours are associated with those competencies. Okay, what else have we done?
Example section 1. When you're doing that exercise,
yeah.
is that, I don't know if you said it, sorry, if you might have missed it, is it anonymously?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
So
the exchanging of ratings, all anonymous. Okay, so the first thing was that, it met the need. Both the team members and the line managers felt it helped them in their one-to-one discussions. That's great. The team members didn't mind it, it was nice and quick. Also, we were all on the team, we were kind of curious, so it was nice to get that information. We realised that it was a really great way of not just communicating the competencies that we thought were of value, but also of starting this whole kind of discussion around competencies. Retrospectives, I love retrospectives. Retrospectives are, fundamentally important to improving how a team works. But competencies is actually something that, unless it's a kind of big group hug type competency session, in my experience, it's something we don't kind of go near in a retrospective, and probably quite rightly so. It's a really good way of beginning that whole discussion and that whole area, getting into that whole area of conversation. People really liked that everyone was treated the same. That was still is what people used to be very, very noticeable. That's what people appreciate. A nice thing was that the team members wanted more feedback. So this kind of turned, I thought that these lightweight ratings would be useful in themselves, nice indicative information, gives great context and a really great kind of good health check, if you like, for everyone and for the team as a whole. But just as I discovered, as soon as people receive a rating from their team that is below their self-rating, they quite naturally want to know why, and also what they can do to improve. So, good. I see it's good. People wanted more feedback. The big downside, essentially, was that it was done very manually with this rather clunky spreadsheet, so it wasn't viable as a manual system. So there was an automation that needed to be. Now, when it comes to So I mentioned that one of the big things we learned was that people needed more feedback. What they actually needed was more detail, more information. And the way that the next experiment we did was with verbal feedback. And who's heard of Marshall Rosenberg? Wonderful, nonviolent communication. Good. It warms my heart when at least a few people put their hands up. These are just immensely powerful ideas. It pains me that fewer people don't know about this man and his work. Very remarkable man, he died last year. Really great stuff. And his ideas, together with the ideas of another Agile coach, Sophie Manton, were the inspiration for the form in which this verbal feedback is gathered and provided or captured. Because it's fairly apparent that there's so much kind of negativity, negative experience that people have had in this area, that even the word feedback is a bad term. It's not a great word to throw around. Traditionally, we talk about feedback, like positive feedback. Where there's positive feedback, there must be negative feedback and criticism. And it doesn't matter how constructive the criticism may be. If you're seeking to influence somebody's behaviour, change someone's behaviours in a way that's more positive way for them, for the team, you start out with that conversation talking about negative feedback or critique or constructive criticism. You're creating an obstacle for yourself that you then have to get over. Now, a big idea from nonviolent communication is that actually all communication is really one of only two things. We're either saying thank you and expressing gratitude for something that somebody is doing that we really like, or we're making a request. And we're saying, please, could you do something different? Do something. So, I've kind of settled on, it's quite good actually, because I can sit under here. So, I've settled on these as preferable terms. So whereas before I would have said positive feedback, now I prefer to think of it in terms of giving recognitions, appreciations or commendations, to express gratitude, to say to someone, that thing you do, really loving it, keep doing it, do more of it. When it comes to what previously might be negative feedback, well, really, we're just making a request. We're giving a suggestion or a recommendation of something that person could do that we feel might improve the situation for them and the team. Because if we're just saying, hey Adam, you're rubbish at giving presentations, or something like that, that's just being nasty. That's just no help at all. But if you're saying, I noticed that you're doing this, have you thought about doing that, and providing some recommendation or suggestion in a positive way, clear way, then that's useful. That's something that they can work with. Okay, what comes next? Oh yes. So it's simple stuff. Commendations then. This is the form we use. Pretty simple. The thing we like that somebody's doing, why we like it, and an example of when they last did that thing that we like. It's just a really clear way of expressing thanks and gratitude, recognising what somebody's doing, giving them a commendation. When it comes to recommendations, they look a bit like this. An observation, the thing that somebody is doing or saying, without judgment, without interpretation, just what we are seeing and hearing. The effect this has on us. An idea, principle of nonviolent communication is that as human beings we're all capable of compassion. Yeah? And if we're able to sense our feeling in reaction to somebody's behaviour, what they're saying and what they're doing, then actually we're creating a situation where we are likely to instill a compassionate response from them to our request. And our request is expressed as a positive action, something that they could do, as opposed to something that we don't want them to do. Don't do that. If we express it as a positive action, it's clearer. It's absolutely clear. If somebody tells me, Adam, don't do that, they're not actually telling me clearly what they want me to do. The other thing also, generally, if we're told not to do something, it's kind of likely to elicit a kind of a defensive reaction, a defensive response. So there it is. It's a simplified form inspired from nonviolent communication with some of those ideas, which people seem to find quite workable. I'll give you an example. This is a real example from my past. Let's take a minute of this. So I'm noticing that you interrupt me before I finish speaking, e.g. in your meeting with the network team when I was explaining how our firewall proxy works. This makes me feel frustrating, because sometimes there are technical risks that need to be understood and considered. So it's very much the feeling. That's when this would happen. It would frustrate me, and that's what I've tried to bring out and why. From now on, it would really help if you would allow me to finish before giving a response, which I value, which is true. I think this would really improve our work together. Now, I mean, I don't know what you think of that. To me, that from years later, many years later, feels like a complete and positive thing. Something I wish I had said. Sadly, what actually happened was that in the meeting with the people of the network team, my frustration boiled over, and I issued something kind of close to that request in front of the network team and my team, and it was a disaster. It was awful. So, sadly, if only then I'd known about this stuff now, I think I would have been much more equipped to give this recommendation at a more appropriate time and in a more appropriate, with a cold mind, in a cold frame of mind, rather than what actually happened. Anyway, so there we are, an example. Now, all of these, the evolution of this approach and all these little ideas seem to be kind of coming together for me into a bigger idea, a bigger realization. If you recall, I characterized the traditional or typical approach to feedback and giving feedback as looking at something like this. But I realized that what we had now was something that was a bit more like this, where everyone was treated the same and feedback was flowing in all directions. It was something that, because it was much lighter, quicker to do, and because it was the verbal feedback was formed as commendations and recommendations, as you've seen, using the ideas of nonviolent communication. Actually, what we had was something that was okay. If it wasn't continuous, then it was certainly much more frequent, and because of that in itself, the frequency of it and the form it was coming in, it was frequent and much more meaningful. So this seemed to me as a basis, a much better basis for a more agile approach to giving feedback, and something that was more aligned with the agile principles, the lean principles of firstly respecting people, and also fast feedback and learning. We go to all kinds of trouble to put feedback loops into all of the team processes and everything we do. And yet there's this one traditional and critical process which actually seems to be immutable. It's like if somebody else other than the team owns it and we can't change it. And it doesn't actually add any value, what's going on. So, what this I thought was that, unlike the traditional approach, it's essentially founded on three core values. As I said, respect is the first one. Everyone's treated equally. The team owns the process and shapes the process through team agreement. So we as a team will decide which competencies are important to us, which ones are important to us at this time, because teams are dynamic and stuff changes. We'll talk about the frequency with which we're going to do this exchange of feedback. And we'll talk and agree to have different conversations with each other as a team, or with other people in the organisation, either within the team or outside the team, who we are happy to share this information with. The last one is important, ownership. With this approach, basically, the individual owns their feedback. Nobody else can see it without them explicitly sharing it with the other party, and therefore knowing that somebody else has this information, and being able to challenge them on that, ask them what they're going to do with it, and also understand if they're being coerced into sharing it, or whether it's a genuine voluntary thing. So ownership and control is a key part of conforming to an agile, a Scrum value, and a lean principle of respecting people.
Would your line manager though deal with it?
Well, so we would have a team discussion where the line manager might say, it is a condition of your employment that you share this information with me, because I have this in the current organisation where this firm is at now. I have this responsibility involving traditional line management type stuff and performance management. I need to do this, so this is mandatory, and you will need to share it with me. And there are places that do that. The difference is, at least you know that's the situation. If you really don't like that, then you can consider your options. They say, okay, well, the old way, that's how it was anyway, and I didn't really know, nobody was, at least this way people are explicit. Other organisations where they have people who are there as coaches rather than line managers, and it's a different kind of dynamic. So they'll say, yeah, absolutely. Happily share with that person because they see it helps them. So when it comes to individual development, what we're aiming to do is to raise competency awareness and behavioural awareness through meaningful feedback, which is frequent. We need to have the ability often to create a safe place for people to do this. It's important that people in authority get feedback, meaningful feedback, and sometimes it's not always, but sometimes it can be necessary for there to be confidentiality and anonymity to create a safe place to enable people to do. Not always, but sometimes possible. And of course, being agile, we value face-to-face conversations. So again, this thing started out as creating information that was useful to people in a one-to-one context, one-to-one development conversation. And then lastly, so team performance. What we're effectively doing through this approach is making the competencies within the team visible. Visible for discussion. And then this raises the interesting possibility, which I think is kind of the big idea. This bit here, that's the big light bulb. The fact that, or the feeling that what this does is it paves the way to performance management becoming a team responsibility. If we thought it was a good idea to have self-organising teams and to not have one person directing the work to the individuals, if we thought that teams were better when they were able to organise themselves around the work, why do we think it's a good idea to have one person who is solely responsible for the performance management of the whole group? It begs the question, what does the team do when the person who is responsible for the performance of the team is somebody who is demonstrating behaviours which are detrimental to the performance of the team? It's a terrible, and it happens, in my experience, it happens. But it's immensely detrimental to the team because they're trapped in a situation that they can't change. And that applies, it's not just line managers. Again, it's a difficult challenge for Scrum Masters. One of the things that makes Scrum mastery and any kind of coaching challenge, then you're trying to enable a team to learn how to self-organise. But you're the one raising issues, they're kind of providing them this vision of what that looks like and approaches to reaching that point. So it's a challenge. How do you do that without looking like the person who is kind of in charge, especially if you're also striving to provide individuals with feedback on their competencies and behaviours and so on. So I think it can become neat and become ultimately a team responsibility. I shared with you this one. This is one visualisation that we're producing, and it's very interesting. I'll tell you now. This data. This isn't real data. This is fabricated data. Just to give you the idea. Essentially, what you have, it's an at a glance. I'll tell you. There you go. First thing is it's strictly anonymised. So I don't know who this person is. That's that rating for this particular competency. We've got 4 people in this team. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dark green is a high competency rating. Darker red is a low. It's organised so that the stronger competencies are at the bottom, and the competencies where there is opportunity across the team for development are floated to the top. So strictly anonymised. It's about the competencies. Yeah, there's nothing in there that says anything about who these individual people or team members are. People may think they know, the team may think they know, but that's as far as it goes. The individual will know, because obviously the individual gets their own chart and they know where they are in this review. It's visible only to the team. Nobody else can see this, but the team members themselves. As I said, opportunities for development at the top, and you can kind of screw your eyes up at it, and at a glance it gives you very quickly actually a sense of what's going on in this team. Now in reality all of the real ones of these have been created. Mostly, almost always it's just a lovely sea of dark and mid-shade green. And I look at them and I go, fine, don't need to think about that at all. I'm really hoping at some point that somebody's going to trial this thing, like a real team in conflict, and they'll get some interesting colour, and then it will be a wonderful case study. But I'm yet to see it, so maybe the thing is useful maybe too. But the reason I'm showing it to you is to give you a sense of how potentially we can make the competencies of the team visible to the team, and they can have a discussion over where they're at. And if they can see, if everyone in the team can see this, and if the team is, this information, this chart has shown them that there's a persistent issue, then potentially they're in place to wave a flag and request an intervention from their organisation and support them growth. So back to that theme, giving the team the mechanism by which they're able to take responsibility for their own ability.
Instead of an average rating, each one of those quizzes is an average rating.
They're medians, actually. Yeah,
right,
medians
okay.
are what they call it, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so to date, just to give you some sense, I've been working on this for a couple of years. I worked closely with some early adopter teams, but then a whole lot of other people have started using it. So more than 25 teams have been using this approach, more than 50 reviews, more than 500, a whole swathe of verbal feedback in the form of commendations and recommendations. And lots of competency ratings displayed. Now, after that, for my early adopters, the people I work with close, it's really hard to get feedback on anything and how well this tool is helping people. The best I've been able to do is to provide the people I've got the most contact with simple user surveys to try and get some sense of how they're finding it. and a couple of wonderful outcomes, which for me have made it all worth it. But I've got a couple of user survey slides that I'm just going to share with you. I'm a bit nervous now because having seen a previous presentation, I'm fully expecting somebody to read that and tell me that my question is biasing my answer. Or, but I don't know, that's literally the question I've got. So it's about individual, how helpful this is for the individual. The outcome so far was this. 15% didn't know, 11% just felt it wasn't helpful to them, but a very significant majority felt it was for them individually. This information. And then when it comes to how helpful do you think this approach was and the information that we gathered to the team, improving the team effectiveness, the response came this. So again, 12% didn't really know, 7% didn't feel it was helpful to their team, but a very significant majority thought that this was a benefit. Not surprisingly, a very similar proportion felt that they actually wanted other teams in their organisations to be exchanging feedback as well. So it's all pretty encouraging stuff, and that's what's kind of kept me plodding on with this thing. I'm pretty much to the end of this. Like I said, my intention was to share this stuff with you. I'm very interested in people's thoughts throughout the rest of the conference, so please ask me that as well. We looked at the bad apple study, Will Phelps' study. That in itself is really interesting and worth a look. I've described this lightweight, team-oriented 360 approach, which I believe is aligned with the principles of Agile, and therefore more beneficial to Agile teams. Spoke a bit about the non-violent communication-inspired forms for verbal feedback. Proposed some values and principles. I mean, those values and principles, I think, are probably applicable to any approach. So, whatever way you think of doing this in your organisation with your teams, then it might be interesting to think about it in terms of those values and see how it stacks up. And then lastly, just presenting this initial idea, this kind of vision I have of enabling performance management as a team concern. Just like, quality is a team responsibility, but the performance management of the team, taking that and having it something that the team can do for itself. There's a growing movement towards Agile performance management now. It's actually a thing. There's some really great videos by a guy called Armin Trost, a German guy who's championing this stuff. So it's looking very positive, and the future's looking pretty bright. So I'm hoping that we'll see much more change there. I think it's important as Agilists to have answers to these kinds of challenges if we want to improve the whole organisation. Okay, and I will share some. There we are, so that's it, that's me. That's what I've got. Thank you ever so much for listening. I hope it was